Mhm.
Okay,
What
I've rambled.
what's re- Thank you, Janet. What's really alive for me, and and I'm glad that you are alluding to this within the Jewish culture, especially as I'm learning more about the churches here in America, especially in the South and in different regions of our nation, is that there's this polarity, and really being able to to discern what the individual needs as far as structure and freedom. We talk about this in kairotic flow as well too. When we did law of rhythm, we talked about kairotic flow, about how when when you're going through the life cycle of an initiative, or going through the life cycle of of anything that has a narrative or a story, there is it starts out in that aerosol gas form, into the liquid form, and into the solid form. And some people don't feel safe unless they're in control, unless they have rigid structures in place. And some people can't be within any kind of, once any kind of structures start to impose, they're out, they're done. So yeah, so it's really alive for me, especially with regard to law of polarity, is continuing to understand the self, as far as how much structure is needed to feel safe, and how much structure feels like it's oppressive. And also, when, like with your, with the creative stuff that we do, and the creative things that we're trying to bring into the world, we're trying to help people tap into that freedom, that they need, when the structures kind of feel a little bit too imposing. And for some people, that freedom can feel oppressive, can feel overwhelming, and can feel like a little bit much. So yeah, that's that balance. That's the balance between structure and freedom that's very alive for me, not only in this conversation, but in the different venues that I'm working in, as well. So I'd like to open the floor up to someone who hasn't spoken in a little bit. What's alive for you? What are you taking in?
I think we were addressed initially with the question about the duality between the social classes. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. That was the original, yeah, inquiry.
And again, I love how rich and diverse of the conversation is. So, being someone that leans more in the spectrum of not having enough, and I certainly don't go hungry, and I'm certainly in a place that is safe. But in regards to having the opportunities of, I don't even want to use the word wealth. I'm hesitant. Again, just having the finances to go to school. I didn't have it. That's a regret of mine, and certainly for most people, I think you can see is if you didn't get to go to school, or if you did go to school and such, that can set the rest of your life on a different trajectory than the other end of again looking at polarities. Um, and I felt, yeah, that there was missed opportunities because of financial necessities and such. So I preface what I'm about to say that, yeah, there's been times when it's kind of sucked not having enough money. It's affect the rest of my. But on the other hand, again, it's not to the extreme of the spectrum as some human beings, and such. But yeah, it does seem illogical when there are people going hungry, and there are people with going without health care, basic human necessities, um, because they just for whatever don't have the opportunities that those who have been able to take those and profit greatly financially from them. And I'm well aware that life's not fair, and that nobody gets equal portions and stuff when they go to the table and stuff. But um, from again someone who can see, again, frankly, where I live here in Las Vegas, I'm not very far from the Raiders training camp, and across the street from this facility there is the executive airport of Henderson, the town of Henderson. Not, I don't say Henderson, it's more people know of Las Vegas. But again, we just had the Formula One race here in Las Vegas. Okay. There was not an open space in that executive airport for another private jet. There was probably more than 100 private jets parked 3 miles away from me. That kind of stuff. I have, guess what I'm saying? I've had glimpses of people that have great wealth, such wealth that they'll probably never ever be able to exhaust it. Even if they were deliberate, like Brewster's Millions kind of things. Like, doggone it, that your mission is to spend all your money, kind of stuff. When you draw your last breath, you should, your bank account should be, overdrawn, kind of thing. So yeah, if I guess how to say is, it doesn't, you can still have great wealth, but I don't know, is if a person was so inclined to see humanity as being not an us versus them, but a collaborative thing. It's just like going, you know what? I still have enough. And why don't I take, there's a meme that's floating around in the last couple of days of talking about to feed everyone, it's like $32 billion a year to feed everybody on Earth. And the richest people, the Elon Musks and the Jeff Bezos and stuff, that's like what they make in a few days, kind of thing. And I have no idea if that's literal or not, but the spirit of it being is, yeah, there's some people in this world, and there's plenty of people that we don't know their name of, that if they were just to be intentional and say, you know what, for international humanity, we're going to dedicate 1% of my annual income to making sure no kid goes hungry, no human goes hungry, and no person that is stricken with a disease that we have the science to treat, dies needlessly. I think I could swallow that cup a lot better than hearing the stories about, so and so just bought this company for so many billions of dollars and this and that kind of stuff. And it's more of a vanity project than actually doing anything that has socially redeeming value. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Randy. Anyone like to respond to Randy's offering, or maybe speak to what you're noticing about the stories or the narratives between the different social classes?
So I know I spoke, but one of the things that Randy said that got my attention was, like how he'd rather see people, helping people who are going hungry to feed the people than the next vanity project of, I just sold another $1 billion and got another private yacht and all that jazz. And I was having this discussion with somebody else, kind of on a similar bandwidth of how, we were both kind of discussing how it's just very distasteful how people are like, oh yeah, I just spent $3 billion on my best friend's birthday. We went in this private plane. It's like, okay, that's very nice. While you're sitting there making a cute little party, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't enjoy your money. There are people that are starving, and you're sitting there saying, I was down in the trenches, but look at me now. And I feel, and this is not to put down people who are wealthy. This is not a money status thing. But I think, again, it's a place of integration that, I feel that it's a responsibility that if, there's a balance between, the collective, we're part of one collective self, but we're also a individual self. And if you go to the Far East, their mindset is we are all part of the collective. I have absolved my ego and I've dissolved my sense of self. But the problem with that, it sounds super pious, but the problem with that is that it's super easy for people they can fall into totalitarianistic mindset traps because they have no sense of self. But if you come here to the West, where the individual self is overly glorified, then you have this vanity thing happening. And really what it is about having a unique self. The unique self is it's like a genocode, a unique encryption that is entitled, let's say, to Randy. It's entitled to Randy. This is Randy's unique thing that only he can do. And it is his obligation. And when I say obligation, I don't mean dictum, or dictatorship. It is obligation, ability, from obliged to respond. It's our responsibility, his responsibility to do his unique thing to serve the collective. So when I heard him talking about, I'd love to see these people, start feeding the world. that's what came up for me. Not that someone should enable someone who doesn't want to work, but if you're in a unique position that you can give back, that also makes me feel better. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, what's alive for me too, in response to that, considering that there are people who are going, without food, there are people who are going without water, there are people who are homeless. I believe that there are more vacated houses in this nation than there are homeless, people who are unhoused. So yeah, so it's kind of like, to me, it comes back to the question of stewardship. What are we stewarding here? Which is the opposite of kind of like what I think of as the pioneer, someone who is trying to do something new, prove something. Again, it's that analogy of the watering can, um, trying to invent bigger and better and more technologically advanced watering cans when it hasn't rained for years and we're in a drought. And what we're stewarding and what we're pointing direction, what we're pointing towards is, how do we make it rain, so that everybody can be nourished. So yeah, and those are polar opposites on that kairotic flow scale, where there's the pioneer who's trying to introduce something new and convince. There's a lot of convincing in that world, a lot of competitiveness, I think, as well too. In contrast to the steward, which is, we're trying to protect what really matters. And I've been homeless, and I've been homeless for close to 2 years at one point in my life. And what became very important to me to protect was just somebody's right, everybody's right to be free to be free from the oppression of authority. Where the story I told myself, the reason why I was homeless, was because I was very much undervalued. I was working as a trainer at the time, a personal trainer at the time, and I was only making $6 for a session. And what I really would like to protect, as a steward, is everybody's right to be in an environment where their gifts, their interests, and what they do can benefit them, and not to benefit someone who already has too much and is telling us this story of scarcity, kind of propagating this story of scarcity. So that's what's really alive for me. So I would like to ask a question, and I would like to have everybody in the room weigh in on this. So let's say this experiment, this game works, and we create this time bank. We change the rules of how much an hour is worth, or how much the commons is worth, and you do attain that $1 million in 20 months. Rather than what are you going to buy, or what are you going to get, or what are you going to invest in, I'd like to ask everybody the question: what do you want to protect? What do you want to nurture? So I'll leave that question on the table for whoever would like to pick up that question, and then after you respond, pass it to someone else in the room.
The earth,
Mhm.
like natural, let's not lose our our national parks and stuff. Let's just do everything to save the earth, because if we don't have the earth, it's the rest of it worth talking about.
Okay. I thought you were going to say creativity or artistic expression. That's where I thought you were going to go, Jenna. But that's
I
awesome.
can't be very creative without a planet to do it on.
That's very true. That's
Yeah.
very true. All right. Anyone else like to weigh in on the question? What do you want to protect? What do you want to steward? What do you want to nurture? Right, Randy, you're on mute.
Yeah, I am on mute. So you use the C word, creativity, and it's been interesting at the top of our discussion. What's new with easier ways? One of the things that I wanted to talk about is the mechanism for helping people find autonomy, find their voice in life, is contemplation and creativity. And that did come out of the meditative state. It's just really interesting. And what I mean by that is not necessarily people becoming poets or artists or actors and such, but finding something within them that they can be creative and in the means of contributing something to the quality of their life and to others. This could be a farm, as we talked about earth and farming and such as that. Could you create some type of renewable energy source? Or again, it's an infinite amount of things that people have the potential of creating, because we look at the course of history and such. We things that we take for granted were quite revolutionary at the time. Irrigation, okay, on the theme of farming and stuff. That changed changed the quality of life for humanity forever. Without irrigation and stuff, we all would have to be living right by the source of water, and we'd all be carrying buckets, kind of stuff, and we would have a very limited food supply and such. So, again, what I would like to protect is the ability for somebody to have the freedom to come up with something that kind of defies the odds, to help people create the impossible. Like, again, not in a matter of flattery and such, Mike. It's just, again, what you're talking about with time banking has the potential of being something the equivalent of irrigation. You know, all of a sudden, this can change the quality of life for humanity for, you know, in as many generations as it is until we do something foolish and end humanity, which, you know, I joke kind of about, but, you know, there is the potentiality. But if there was a means to protect you from not being repressed or having this spark extinguished, that's what I'd like to bring. Again, to protect the ability for people to be innovators.
Very good. Are you complete?
Yes, my 2 cents.
Excellent. Why don't you pass it in to someone else in the room?
You know, I have not heard John speak much. I'd like to hear John's ideas.
Sure. So when you first said protect, I thought, well, you know, that's like almost, it occurred to me like a weakness. You know, that was my first reaction to it. And as I was listening to everyone speak so far, the thing that I would like to protect is the sacredness, connectedness of life, you know, of our togetherness, of who we are. That is you know, we are nature. So like when I go out and go outside, that's nature. But when I'm inside, that's nature too, because nature is everything that's got a, you know, a live component. And that is such a power that we don't exercise, you know, as human beings. Fear kills connectedness, you know, because the first thing that happens when I'm fearful is I don't want to touch anything. I want to be connected. I want to be disconnected to save myself, you know. And so that's kind of what came up when you said, what do you want to protect? But I you know, that's not it. So, you know, I guess that's what it would be for me, is that connection that takes my 9,000 trillion electrons that connect to electrons throughout the entire cosmos. And you know, that value I would like to protect.
All right. Sorry. We'll try again in a moment here, but why don't we pass it to Michelle? Do you feel ready to answer the question, or do you feel you would like to answer the question about what do you feel is worth protecting?
know why it's so difficult to unmute myself. It seems like it takes an eternity to get that button to unmute. Protecting is an interesting word. It implies that, to me, that there is something that is endangered. So for me, one of the things I've been journeying on is the balancing of the divine feminine and masculine energies, and understanding and being compassionate that that there's been a lot of imbalancing with the energies in the last several decades. And so that one of the ramifications, at least for women in conversations, is the desire to feel safe. And so one of the things I have been working on adjusting is my perspective that safety is always present. So when you ask that question, what is it that you would want to protect? I kind of drew a little bit of a blank because I've been working on the belief that I and everybody that I love are always protected. And so I might be looking at it a little bit too linearly, but it's the meaning that protect has to me. It implies and something is endangered. So I was thinking, well, if I did get that million or 6 million in 7 months, what would be important to me?
Michelle,
And
how does the word nurture? What would you like to nurture?
I like that word, nurture. I would like to nurture the ability for continued expansion. At the same time, I would like to nurture the ability to bring balance into my sphere of influence. So if I have the ability, if my presence here on this planet has an ability, I would like it to be that everything about my presence would help to bring an energy balance to anybody that's within my sphere of influence. And I'm sure that in the field of potentialities and probable realities, there's an infinite number of ways that can happen. So I'm not going to, I don't know all of the ways that would be possible. But that would be what I would like to nurture, is for that to continue to expand, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for opening your offering as well too, about the balance of the divine masculine and divine feminine. It called attention to the use of words that I use, where to me protection almost seems like more of like a masculine protector type of thing, where nurturing is more of that feminine motherly nurturing. That's just what came up for me. So yeah, I really appreciate you calling attention to that, because that's calling attention to the other universal principles as well too, which I think law of polarity, or the universal principle of polarity, and the universal principle of gender is very alive for me in what you had just offered there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Nini, what are you
Okay.
feeling into this one? Yeah.
So I was listening and all have really good answers. 1 second. Had a little cough attack with myself on mute. The thing that I think I would want to give, I don't think money can really provide for, because I want to be a millionaire, billionaire because it's freaking fun. And there's a lot of taboo around people who are spiritual can't make money because money is the root of all evil. And I think we've discussed many times in this conversation that evil is a construct, and that isn't true. money is actually the balanced polarity of the divine masculine of commodity, but the divine feminine of currency. It's the balance, and we're mad at Nixon because in 1971 he got rid of commodity and he got rid of the silver backing behind the dollar, and he made it into a currency. And on the front end, superficially, it looks like a really stupid thing. But if you think about it, it's the balance, because what's a commodity? Someone can have millions of dollars in the bank and be a miser because he never spends it, and someone can just spend, and the money's just flowing right out, and they don't have any savings. But the thing I feel, the value I want to give is, the gift of health and life that keeps someone alive, holding space for them to be exactly who they are. The way that money is currently used, at least in this way, I don't know if me being a billionaire could give that to somebody, because I can sit there and say I was able to do that for myself and I was never impoverished like most people on this call. But I know what it's like to struggle. I know what it's like to face very uncomfortable positions and, be in very bad places and, somehow get myself out of it. And, it's the grace of God and just being in synchronicity and praying and whatever it is. So I don't know if, but I do want people to know that money is a beautiful frequency, and there's a lot of taboo around it because the most forbidden thing is always the most, triggering aspect, the hardest to own. So, I would want people to know that anyone can do it if they want to, and if they're not ready to hold space, give compassion, be loving, be kind. These are things, this is an old commercial, there are certain things that money can't buy, so everything else is MasterCard, These are the things that money really can't buy. But at the same time, money is here as a tool for us to enjoy this universe and the divine energies of, currency versus commodity. You want to say like protection and nurturance. I thought those were good words. I feel that's how it plays in. So, if you want to be a millionaire, be a millionaire. Just do it and be responsible. And I don't mean most people are going to pay their bills and whatever. I don't think you're trying to cheat, but it's more than just that. Use money as a tool of integrity and be an example of what it gets to be. You don't have to show off about it. It's not about bragging. It's about just making the alchemy in the mundane. Talk about polarity, making the alchemy in the mundane. And that's really what I stand for. So I hope that makes sense.
No, that's beautiful, Amy. Yes, the alchemy in the mundane. And I think that's what if I could kind of really kind of point to a theme of what these universal principles are really about, is also how enlightenment is found in appreciation of the small. When you look at the very small, the atomic energy, there's so much there. So that's what's alive for me in just that response of of the alchemy of the mundane. And to me, I think there's a lot of divine oneness just in that observation right there. So thank you for that. All right, we are almost at the end of our time together, so we'll do a checkout in a moment. But I just want to announce that next week we're still pinning down a day and a time and the logistics around it. But we'll be talking about law of magnetism next week. So the entire journey that we've been on so far, that's going to be part 9. So we're going to do four more of these recordings in December. So just a little recap of where we've been and where we're going. The first month in October was really about the universal principles that help us break the ice and having these conversations and start to talk about what does need to shift in order for us to make collaborative environments out of competitive ones. So that's really where the living library really shines in helping to establish communication, conversation culture, and collaboration. This month, and we are concluding that with this conversation tonight with Law of Polarity, we have been talking about more about getting in the middle of the relationship between time and money. A lot of these conversations, we're all investing our time in these conversations, and with the supplemental material that I've been offering, I've been kind of just kind of pointing at the direction of the mechanics about how time banking, how our time spent in a time bank where we're collaborating and we're logging that data, how to kind of change the financial system from within. And then next month in December, with the law of magnetism, the law of compensation, the law of perpetual transmutation of energy, and the law of inspired action, I'm going to give a step-by-step guide on how to start to implement this so that we create that compounding effect, create that ripple effect, so that we can see universal basic income happen within a year to 2 years. So that's what we're kind of setting up here with this entire universal principles, natural law, and regenerative economy. So we're at 7:31. So we'll just do a quick check out. I'd like to ask everybody, what did you appreciate most about tonight's conversation? And if someone were to ask you in 6, 7 months' time, do you remember that conversation you had back about the law of polarity? What do you think you would remember most about our conversation tonight? So I usually start these off with what I really appreciate is what I really appreciate is how this is a different mix than last week. So I really appreciate kind of like the diverse voices that we're getting in these conversations. And if I were to ask, what do I remember most about this particular conversation? I would have to say I really appreciate bringing in the narrative and the conversation around the Jewish culture, Janet and Nini, that you had brought tonight. So that's one of the things that I really want to open up conversations about is different cultures between the Christian, the Jewish, the Muslim, the Hindu, and bringing all of the faiths, the interfaith community together to have these kind of conversations. So that's alive for me at this moment is what you had brought about the insights from the Jewish culture. And I'm out with that. And what I'll do is I think I'll pass it to you, Janet.
Well, I was going to say that's exactly what really hit me hard today. I'm very grateful for Nini for bringing it up. I had I hadn't actually concretized it in my mind how my experience with Orthodoxy helped me so much to judgments that I had about it and getting over those judgments, how much that's helped me to overcome my whole viewpoint about anything in life that's different and separate and that looks different and separate, like the poor and the rich and the this and the that. Because that's what I think I knew Judaism before I knew much of anything. It was very I was raised in a rich, my parents really honored the Jewish religion, the traditions in my house, and that's what I remember from the youngest age of everything. So that's probably where I first started to learn about all of that. So that's what I remember mostly from today.
Hey, why don't you pass it to somebody else in the room?
Okay, I pass it to Randy.
Um, yeah, there's so much that's been presented. Gosh, I'm going to listen back to this and contemplate some things here. It kind of comes back to, again, when you spoke earlier about the law of polarity not being necessarily one extreme or the other. It's all the grays in between. And what I heard today was a lot of grays, a lot of whites, a lot of blacks. And I love it. I mean, I really, truly do love hearing people speak from the heart, but not in a, I don't know, Pollyanna way. I mean, there's a lot of intelligence mixed in with this love, and I think that's sacred, more so than anything, is the fact that we're in a space here where we can contemplate and consider and share freely and openly amongst each other without fear of punishment. And that, honestly, I think that's another thing as well is, my goodness, this may be Pollyanna, thrown in here and stuff, and it's beyond something I could protect. But I remember as a child, my dad saying, you're only as free as they let you be, kind of thing, which I think I understand what he was getting at. But man, imagine if we could live in a society where these kind of conversations were much more common. This was the rule, not the exception. And they started off from, again, being a child and stuff is when we had that sense of awe and wonder. And we could just kind of say, yeah, but what about this? Kind of stuff, and just exploring possibilities like we just did. So, anyway, this was, again, to surmise what I was just expressing and stuff, this was just a wonderful demonstration of the human spirit and what it means to be in a safe, collaborative experience without fear of anything being wrong or right. So, thank you for facilitating this, Mike.
My pleasure, Rand. And please pass it to someone else in the room who hasn't spoken to the.
I'm going to go back with John. John, my go-to. Please take it away.
So I think what I'll remember is the balance of it. It was like a juggling match tonight, not a match, but a juggling exhibition, and there was like perfect connection and cohesiveness between wherever the balls were going, and it was just all done with integrity because it just worked. It brought workability to the conversation and to my thinking anyway as I was going through. And so that's what I'll remember most. And I will pass it off to Michelle.
Thank you. I agree with Randy. I think that what I enjoy about these conversations is the unconditionalism of it, the ability for everyone to give their perspectives on whatever the conversation is being talked about, and the space that everybody else holds for each other to be able to have that grace to speak very honestly and openly from their heart. So I agree, and thank you for creating this space. It's really lovely, refreshingly different, but lovely.
Thank you, Michelle. And you can pass it to either Hemant or Nini. We'll see if Hemant's sound is working yet. If why don't we pass it to you, Hemant? Let's see if we can get sound here. No, all right. Well, we very grateful that you are here. Very grateful that you are here. And sorry the sound did not work out tonight, but your presence is is a blessing. So thank you for for joining us and being present to our conversation. So we'll pass it to Nini.
Okay, so for me, what was very powerful was there are certain things that I said kind of openly that I know I get flack for. And one of the things that I know since I first met Michael a couple of years ago was talk about holding a safe space. And, everyone says it, but not everyone walks their talk. But I do see, I've been in conversations where, even with heart-centered people, there's one or two people that open their mouths and they stab you in the back, even in the safest of environments. But over here, in this conversation, I felt everything was said with integrity, like what Randy and Michelle said and John said. And there was really no judgment. People just, I like the word, juggling exhibition. It was like a talent show. Everyone just collaboratively worked together and built off each other like friends. And I do want to give, I hope I say his name, Hinat. He's always been here, so thank you for showing up.